Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Sebbing. Today we're going to do a quilting video, and this is one of the easiest quilting stitches you can do. It's very easy to do on a long arm or a home sewing machine, and it's super fast. It's just a simple wavy line, and I chose it for this quilt for two reasons. One, it mimics the lines of the fabric in some of these, and we'll take a little bit closer look at that. And two, I needed to get this done super fast. We got this fabric and we had about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks between when the fabric arrived and when I needed to have this quilt done, quilted, photographed, the pattern written, and out to you guys. So I was under a super tight deadline and I needed something that would go really quick. And we've all been there. We have all finished a quilt at almost the last minute and really needed to quilt it fast. So this is a really great one to save, so that way you can do it at home when you end up with that kind of a situation. Now, I did this entire lap quilt in about an hour. So you wouldn't be able to do that on your home sewing machine because it takes a little longer using your walking foot or your free motion foot, but on the long arm it's definitely possible, and we're going to show you some tips on that today. Now, real quick before we get into all of the actual tutorial part of it, this quilt was designed and created for our Stashin with Stephanie Club. If you haven't heard of it, you are missing out. You get 10 fat quarters for $29.99 a month plus shipping. We send you a free pattern inspired by the fabric. This one was inspired by this month's collection, and then you also get exclusive discounts and first dibs on getting additional fabric, so you can create your own project from it or do the one that we've created. And then you also get access to all of our Stashin with Stephanie patterns that we've created to date. It's almost a $300 value now. You get a coupon code on my book, Fat Quarter Workshop, which is also chock full of fat quarter friendly patterns. They're the top 10 that were in the Stashin with Stephanie Club, and now they're only available there. Plus there's 2 exclusives. You can get a signed copy from us, or you can also order from Amazon. It is one of the best sellers in the quilting category there, which is super exciting. And then of course you get first dibs on all the fabric, which, you know, it sells out really fast. By the time you're watching this, I'm not positive we're going to have fabric, but we'll see. We have it currently. We will see how long it lasts. Sometimes it goes super fast. We only allow a certain number of new members every month because we have to place our fabric order 6 months in advance, and it is really hard to add to it with the craziness of the mills with everyone producing fabric for mass. So go head on over to shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com and sign up. If you see this and the signups are closed, please join the wait list and join as early as you can in the first of the month, so that way you can get your slot. I suppose first we should talk about thread. As always, I'm going with my Glide, and this is the one that has a little bit of sheen to it. It is the 40 weight, and I use color 17443 bone. I use this a lot. I use probably 95% of the time I'm using white, an ivory, or a really light gray, and that I do almost always because it just kind of blends. And you can see, like, it's been used in these really bright prints, but you really can't see it until you get real close to it. It just kind of takes on the color, and especially with that sheen, it just kind of pops. So you can see it pretty good in some of these darker colors, but in all the lighter ones, they just kind of fill in and just look like texture, which is great. And especially it blends, of course, with the background as well. All right, so this one is just wavy lines. We're going to talk through how I figured out the spacing as we watch the play-by-play. All right, so you can see I'm starting at the center of a row. It is right at one of those points, and I'm kind of just doing a wiggly line, trying to kind of stick right in the middle. Now, sometimes I need to put a left hand down if things are kind of moving around on me. That's so that things won't pucker. My quilt is super flat, but I don't know, sometimes it wants to move just around on me, just a little bit. So you can see I'm already done with one row. Now, my quilting machine does not like to go from right to left. It only likes to go from left to right. So I cut all my threads and at the end from row to row, and I don't have to do anything special because I'm just gonna chop off the ends and put binding on, and they'll get secured that way. So we're gonna head back over to the start. And now for this one, I'm going to go straight down the center again. Now these rows are offset a little bit, and I did that on purpose so that way you wouldn't have any seams to match when you're putting it together. It'd be super easy. But when you're doing something like this, what you want to do is make sure that you have some good spacing. If you start off and you are going really, really tight with your spacing, then you are committed to doing that for the entire quilt. But if you start off by doing some regular intervals and then just get a little tighter as you go, then you can say, okay, I feel like I'm done with this. All right, so we've got row 2 down straight the center there, and that's all done. So now we're gonna do the next spacing after we cut the threads. All right, so here I'm starting off in the middle of that sashing strip, and that is about a 1-inch sashing strip. And so I'm just gonna kinda do my wavy line and try to stay within that sashing strip. And I have no rhyme or reason to where things are going. I want it to look very organic. I'm just kind of popping back and forth and trying to make it a nice smooth curve. You can see how fast this goes. We already have gotten, it's like about 5 foot. It's about as tall as I am. But we've already gotten 3 passes done. So it goes so fast when you're doing this. The other thing I've done is I've loaded the quilt on the long arm sideways. So I'm quilting from bottom to top here instead of going from top down, where normally you're quilting from left to right on the quilt. Instead, I'm going straight up and down that quilt so I can get those nice vertical lines. All right, so here I am, I'm going through the sashing again, and this way I can get those really good variations. So here you can see I quilted down the centers, and then I quilted down here, and then I can decide how much more I want to add to it, if anything. I mean, at this point, I could consider this done. I certainly have quilted enough in order to keep the batting from shifting as it is worn and washed. So you could just be done with it and move on to your next quilt at this point. But I like to have a little bit more texture. If I would have had more time, I would have done even more texture than this, but I needed to get it done fast. All right, so right now I'm about halfway in between the point and the middle of that row and that sashing strip. Now, if I wanted to, probably if I would have had more time, I would have done 2 lines in between, so that way I could get a little bit closer stitching, but I was pressed for time, so I just did 1 wavy line of stitching in between that middle point and in between that sashing. All right, so that one's done. Got some good texture. I mean, it's about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in between all those wavy lines. My goal is to mostly have them be nice and organic, not be too matchy with the one that's above or below it, and also definitely don't cross over those lines. Now, you certainly can cross over the lines if you want to, if that's how you want it to look, but if you do that, then you should do it on every one so it looks intentional as opposed to a little bit here and there. All right, so now that's the very top row of the quilt. So there isn't a quilting line above it, but you can see I'm in like that quarter of the block, just going up and down. And there's no rhyme or reason. I'm not trying to match the one below it. I'm just trying to create a nice organic wavy line. And you can see it kind of matches in with the wavy lines that you see in that green fabric for the flying geese. So it kind of echoes the print as well, which is always great when you can do that. Take elements of what's in the design and of the fabric and then also put it in your quilting. All right, so maybe we'll speed this up a little bit and go through, but at this point, what I'm doing is I'm gonna also be filling in those lines about halfway in between the point and the sashing. I'm just going straight down those sides and splitting that in kind of a quarter. So that really is all there is to it. You're just going to segment that block in first predictable ways. You want to get maybe a center of the block and then maybe a quarter of the block, or in this case I did down the center and then I did down the sashing and then I did one more down the quarters. Now if I would have had more time, I probably would have done 2 in between the center and the sashing, but you know, this one had to get done really fast because I was on a really tight deadline from when we received the fabric to when we needed to get everything released for you all in the subscription club. One thing I do want to point out is as I go down, I continue to do that. I'm going to continue to sew down my center first and go all the way down whatever I can fit in the throat of my long arm. And then I'm gonna do the sashing, and then I'm gonna do the middle. And that will keep it looking really consistent with as far as your spacing is concerned as you work your way down the quilt. If you're doing this on your home sewing machine, you would wanna do it the same way. You would wanna quilt maybe down all your centers and sashings, and then that would get everything nice and stabilized and basically basting it with your quilting. And then you can go back through and you can quilt down the centers. Even if you were doing it on your home sewing machine and you just went down all your centers, that would be great. That would be plenty, because then you could take out all your pins and you could put it away for a little bit and you can come back to it at any time. All right, so here you can see I'm starting on my next row, and I'm just starting. What I like to do, this is a great tip, is I like to secure the edges of my quilt first. So I stitch down them, and this keeps it nice and square. Now this is not a great thing to do, at least I haven't figured out how to do it on your home sewing machine, but when you're doing it on the long arm, it really makes for very nice straight edges, and you can see a marked difference in between the ones that I did before I started doing this and after, in terms of how wavy the sides are. The ones I did after are not wavy at all. All right, so here I am. You can see I'm going down that center again, and then we're just gonna repeat that as we go down. All right, so that's my biggest tip, is that even once you've figured out your spacing, continue to stitch with that same pattern. Like do your centers, then do your sashings, and then go in between your centers and sashings. And that way you'll have consistent texture as you work all the way across the entire quilt. Thanks so much for following along. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learned a really fast and easy stitch. We do have a video as part of our beginner quilting series that shows you how to do wavy lines with a walking foot on your home sewing machine. It's one of our most viewed videos, so I think you guys are gonna love it. I quilt a quilt about this size on my home sewing machine. I do it on the little home sewing machine to show you that this can be done no matter what level of sewing machine that you have at home. Make sure you check out Stashin with Stephanie if you haven't already. Also like and subscribe over on the channel. That way you'll get the videos before everybody else, and you'll get your best chance at getting fabric, especially with the Stashin with Stephanie stuff. It really goes fast. We've got a lot of members. They get first dibs, and there just is not a lot left once we get to everybody else. So the best way to make sure you get fabric like this every month is to become a member, and then you get all those awesome benefits, the free patterns, the discounts that are exclusive to you for both fabric and also my book, Fat Quarter Workshop, which you can get from us. So you can get a signed copy, or on Amazon is fine too. All right, well, stay tuned, because next up we've got an interview with the designer of this fabric, Tamara Kate. She's been designing fabric for a long time, but this is her first collection with Windham. Before that, she was with another fabric company, and it's a really cool story on how she got into the business. It's really fun, especially when you hear about her very first quilt and how it was on display at Quilt Market. Can you imagine your very first quilt and it's displayed to anybody who's going to Quilt Market? That's pressure. That's scary. So check it out. It's coming out in a couple of days. Make sure you're subscribed or join our email list, and you can save 10% on your first order over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Thanks so much, and until next time, happy quilting.